During the American Industrial Revolution, the United States went through a series of changes to the way many businesses were organized and operated. Through these changes and the business practices of industrialists like Andrew Carnegie, J.P. Morgan, John Rockefeller, and Cornelius Vanderbilt, the United States was thrust into an era of big business and massive industrial growth. Before we can understand the growth of the United States and how the business practices impacted the country, we have to look at some basic details of how businesses are organized and operated. This includes understanding some basic vocabulary terms, such as entrepreneur, which refers to the person who organizes or manages a business, the term monopoly, which refers to the complete control of a good or service in an industry, the term industry, which refers to the production of a good or service in a single field. For example, the automobile industry collectively produces cars, and there are a variety of different automobile manufacturers, such as Ford, Chevy, Hyundai, etc. Another example of an industry is the steel industry, where a variety of factories and steel production facilities produce the steel that is used for other products. Lastly is the term business, and a business refers to a single organization where ownership attempts to provide a service or make a profit in the operation of their business. An example of a business would be a car dealership, restaurant, or grocery store which provides a service and sells a good to their customers. The first type of business that can be organized and operated is known as a sole proprietorship. A sole proprietorship is a business that is owned, run, and operated by one individual person, known as an entrepreneur. Sole proprietorships are often referred to as small businesses and are the most common form of business in the United States today. Roughly 75 to 80% of all businesses in the United States are sole proprietorships. However, these businesses only account for roughly 50% of all U.S. sales and jobs throughout the country. The other 50% are largely provided by corporations or large partnerships, which we will examine in future slides. The main advantage to a sole proprietorship is that in a sole proprietorship, one single owner is motivated to run a successful business because they get to decide what to do with the profits. They can choose to keep all the profits for themselves. They can choose to reinvest those profits into growing and expanding the business, or they can decide to share those profits with employees and workers to reward them for their work in supporting and helping the business operate. The main disadvantages to a sole proprietorship are that the owner is responsible for every aspect of the business and must provide all of the capital or funding to start and run the business until it turns a profit. In the event that a sole proprietorship fails or operates at a loss, the single owner is the one who is responsible for those losses and has to suffer the financial consequences of them. Examples of sole proprietorships include businesses such as small bars and restaurants that are not part of a larger chain, local auto mechanics, and local hair salons and stylists. These businesses operate independently from the rest of the stores in their industry, and one single owner usually makes all of the decisions regarding the business's operation. The second type of business that can be organized is a partnership, which is a business that is organized and owned by two or more individuals. As small businesses grow and become larger, they often transition into partnerships where other investors are brought in, or where a business is handed down to the children of a business owner and multiple people take over the operation of a business. In a partnerships, individuals are able to pool their resources, giving more resources and ability for the company to operate, and business partners share the responsibilities for running and maintaining the business. While partnerships make it easier for businesses to operate because the responsibility is shared in terms of expenses, work, profit, and losses, there are several disadvantages, which include incidents where partners may not agree on how to operate a business and may end up splitting the business, causing it to close, or that partners may disagree on how to run things and one partner becomes responsible for the actions of the other partner. The final form of business that exists in the United States is what's known as a corporation. Corporations are legally recognized entities or beings that are recognized by the United States government and the laws of the country. Corporations are often owned by a group of stockholders who invest their money by purchasing stock, which entitles them to a percentage of ownership or share of the corporation. Corporations include businesses such as Apple, Amazon, Home Depot, and McDonald's, pictured to the right. As a corporation, these businesses have some advantages that other businesses do not. In the case of corporations, they are required to pay taxes for the profits of the corporation, which entitles them to different tax rates than a small business owner who has to pay taxes on all of the profits themselves. Corporations can also enter into contracts and borrow money on behalf of the stockholders that own the business. The advantages of corporations are that they can exist and continue doing business long after the death or retirement of the original founding members. Corporations are recognized as a legal business or entity, and corporations can use their status and success to attract investors and additional capital to help the business run. Corporations also have the advantage that there is limited loss for stockholders, who are only responsible for the money they invest. This also allows stockholders to buy and sell their stock without significant change in the operation of the company. The disadvantages of corporations are that they are often difficult to start because they require a significant number of investors and large amounts of capital to develop the business. Under corporations, the founders and original owners of a company may end up losing control if enough shares of the company are sold to where they can be outvoted by the company's leadership. Corporations are also subject to significantly more government regulations to prevent them from becoming monopolies or taking control of an entire industry themselves. The concept of corporations got their origins from the business practices of industrialists like Carnegie, Vanderbilt, J.P. Morgan, and John Rockefeller. These business leaders practiced one of two approaches to running their business. The first approach was known as vertical integration. Under vertical integration, a company takes over or merges with similar companies who are involved in the supply chain or the process of making a product. Under vertical integration, one owner attempts to acquire all of the other businesses needed to make a product or provide a service. For example, if a shoe manufacturer wanted to practice vertical integration, they would attempt to buy or start other businesses such as leather suppliers, a shoelace company, a shoebox company, and a chain of shoe stores to sell their products. By owning all of these individual smaller businesses, the owner of the shoe manufacturing company would control the process of making shoes from start to finish. They would own the raw materials. They would own the factories where the shoes are produced. They would own the supplemental materials that are needed to make the shoes, such as shoelaces and the box. And then they would sell the shoes in their own stores so that all throughout the production process, they controlled the decisions, the distribution, and the profit of making the shoes. During the Industrial Revolution, Andrew Carnegie successfully implemented this strategy in the steel industry. Carnegie used his resources to buy mining operations to control the coal and iron ore and the other raw materials that were needed to produce steel. He developed steel factories, and then he invested in controlling the railroad lines and other shipping lines where his steel would be distributed throughout the country. By doing so, he became the largest steel manufacturer in the United States and produced massive amounts of steel and profit for his businesses. The second strategy that industrialists used was known as horizontal integration. Horizontal integration is different from vertical integration in that under this philosophy, one business owner attempted to merge multiple smaller companies within the same business or industry together to create one large corporation that was able to dominate an industry. By consolidating multiple small businesses under one ownership, business owners were able to eliminate their competition, which allowed them to control the manufacture and distribution of goods and gave them the ability to set the price as high as they wanted because there was little or no competition to create a similar product. This strategy discourages technological advances and improvements within an industry because there is no competition to force business owners to make a better product. For consumers, this often resulted in cheaper or inferior products being made and the overall quality of goods going down. In order to consolidate businesses through this strategy, many trusts were formed, which were organized by the exchanging of stock within multiple businesses. And they would create trust shares, which were bought by one central company. An example of horizontal integration would be if a supermarket chain bought out all of its competitors. So if Giant Eagle merged with and bought Foodland, Shop and Save, Shopper's Choice, and Aldi, they would control all of the groceries in this region and would be able to set whatever price they wanted for all the foods that were able to be bought at the store. They would also be able to control what foods were available to customers. During the American Industrial Revolution, this strategy was practiced by John Rockefeller in the oil industry. He created a company known as the Standard Oil Company and pursued the strategy by buying up all of the oil refineries throughout the United States. He established one central company, Standard Oil, as a trust and bought the other companies and had them managed and run by Standard Oil so that he was making all the decisions. This created a monopoly and gave Rockefeller almost complete control of the American oil industry. At its peak, Standard Oil owned or controlled 90% of the oil production in the United States. Through the business practices of horizontal and vertical integration, industrialists like Rockefeller, Morgan, Carnegie, and Vanderbilt drastically changed the landscape of American business. Under their decision-making, big businesses flourished, and corporations developed which were able to employ large number of workers. While these corporations were providing jobs to many Americans and immigrants, it was the business owners and the stockholders who gained most of the wealth and reaped most of the rewards of the company's success. Due to their ability to gain large amounts of wealth, many small businesses were not able to compete with these large corporations and were either bought out by industrialists like Carnegie and Rockefeller, or the companies simply went bankrupt and closed their doors, resulting in their workers having to go work for corporations. Once the production of steel, oil, and railroads had been converted to big business, the industrialists were able to create monopolies and trusts, giving them complete control of these industries, allowing them to raise the prices of goods and service and eliminate their competition. These results, along with the strategies that they used, led to them being referred to as robber barons. Robber barons were viewed negatively because they were incredibly wealthy businessmen who believed that they were superior to other businessmen and that business should be treated as a survival of the fittest environment where only the strongest businesses will survive. This led many business owners to force their workers to work in dangerous and difficult conditions for low wages in order to cut costs and maximize their profits. This decision and the impact that it had on workers and small business owners led to the antitrust movement, which we will look at in a future lesson. Under the antitrust movement, workers and small business owners began to call out and attack the unfair business practices that were being undertaken by the robber barons, and led to the creation of laws such as the Sherman Antitrust Act and attempts to stop the growth of monopolies in the United States.